Well, good morning, Westwood. My name is Jordan Keaton. I'm so glad to be here presenting to you about my trip to Africa. I went with my team up at the JAR Center in Waxhaw, North Carolina. We have a solar team that does a lot of consulting for overseas missionaries, but another part of our job is when the time comes, we will go there ourselves overseas to whether it be installing solar or fiber optic or electrical grounding systems. The latter two are the ones that I'll be talking about today. We went over to Cameroon. This is the whole IT team there. And today I thought I'd wear our traditional Anglophone Cameroonian shirt from the Bamenda region. And I do have a hat that I can put on for just a second, so I know we're in the sanctuary, so I'm glad Pastor David's not here. And, well, Pastor Lynn's here, and I apologize. But this is a traditional Cameroonian style hat, from the Bamenda region, an Anglophone region. So I thought if it's okay, I might present in attire today. Uh, so let me give a little bit of a preface. Part of the work that we do for this center here is around 30 plus buildings. It has around 120 people at a time working there, many who are missionaries. There are also nationals who work there with the center. And currently, right now, they are working on 33 plus New Testaments, different languages that do not speak other tribal languages. They have their own tribal language, or they speak one of the national languages. Now for Cameroon, as you can see, Cameroon is in what I like to call the armpit of Africa. It's just the easiest way to describe where it's located. So Cameroon, it looks like a little, like a rooster. It's got a little tail feather, and it's got a little fluff on the head, and it's, so they call it the rooster country. So part of where I was around in the middle of the country of Cameroon, a tropical location. I'm really excited to just talk a little bit about the people that we got to meet there. I mentioned they have two national languages, English and French. The country in and of itself is divided. You have Francophones or French settled Africans, and then you have Anglophones or English British settled Africans. And those two share this country. Now, I say that because you might say, well, isn't a French or an English Bible just all that we need then? And that's actually not the case. If you look at a map of Cameroon, right here, all that red, inside just that red-colored space, there's about 258 different languages. And when we say languages, I mean people that are just as far different from one another tribally and culturally as I am from a Russian or I am from somebody in the Philippines. If you plop me down there, I don't look like them. I don't speak like them. I'll make a fool of myself because I have no idea how the culture goes. But that's the same for just inside there. The people we worked with, the native Cameroonians, all of them speak French mostly, and the Anglophones speak English, but they also know French fluently because right now the government is run by Francophones. So French is mainly the national language. They say English, but it's mainly French. So even the English speakers fluently speak French. That said, a lot of the people there, we got to learn and talk with some of the nationals, and just about every single different national was like from a different tribe. There was one of the men that we were working with, this man right over here in the overalls, that is Emmanuel Chinepo. Emmanuel speaks Awing. Awing is his mother tongue. It's from his tribe. And I asked him, I said, is there anyone else here in this city or in this center? And he said, no, there's not really, no. The Awing, you have to go out to this certain region and it's pretty far away. I'm really right now the only Awing that I know of. I don't really know anyone else here that speaks Awing. We had some other people that were here. Rachel, she does not speak Awing. She speaks French. Her tribe, I can't remember if she speaks Limbu or Otto or another one, but she has a specific tribe, and actually the cool thing that we learned halfway through is she's a queen. She was so embarrassed about it, and she was just like, no, I'm not, but she's like, but let me tell you, yes, my grandmother, when she passed away, in her tribe, her grandmother, instead of to her mother, passed down the queenship to her. And she was like, so it's very different and very not normally in the culture, but she was very gracious. She's an intern with the IT team, and she was just a go get 'em, let's do this, tell me everything you know about this trip, about why you're here, about can I go out and dig the trenches with you? And Emmanuel was like, no, we can't let we can't just let all of us just stand back and watch the woman starting to dig hard and fast into the concrete and dirt. It's like, that is very shameful. But she did get to participate. So the reason we went, the reason for this whole trip with all these different languages and all these different groups is because last fall, the center had lost a lot of equipment. Basically, what had happened was each season that they have, rainy season, you have a lot of thunder strikes, you have a lot of storms. Those take out very expensive pieces of equipment. And basically, it's not so much a, hey, let's go buy another one, so much as it's, looks like we're going to have to do without, or maybe we're going to have to import it, or let's try and fix it. So they had a lot of major damages around the center, and we had been emailing back and forth, and we finally came up with a solution that, yes, we need to send a team there. Well, what were we going to do? Part of solutions to helping prevent lightning damage, which destroys network, laptops, computers, they have a telephone system. Like I mentioned, this center is about 30 plus buildings. And so if their telephone system, they had lost 32 different telephones. They had lost many different laptops. They had lost a lot of network switches. This is thousands of dollars that they don't have the budget to replace. And so part of the solutions we had was to bring in grounding and fiber optics. Now you may say, how does that work with electricity? So fiber optics is hollow glass. It transmits data through light. Well, fiber optics do not conduct electricity. It's not a copper cable. Electricity doesn't run down it. And so when you'd have a massive thunderstorm that comes through, every copper line that's buried in the ground going from building to building is like holding hands with people with the last person trying to touch the electric fence. And so not only does that person feel it, but everyone holding hands will also feel it. So to have a fiber optic line buried between buildings, all of a sudden we have this guy touching the fence, and now I'm out. I'm not going to be affected by this. And because I'm not affected by this, if I'm the main person who's also holding hands with the rest, now it's only the guy touching the electric fence who's getting a little bit of a shock, and everybody else can stay safe. So another part of this mission was doing grounding systems. And part of the grounding systems that we have is when lightning does strike nearby, and it sends a massive electrical surge. They have, again, because the ground there is very, very dry, and so the resistance is very, very high, and what that means is instead of lightning finding a nice, easy path down into the ground away from you, it decides that's a little too hard. I'm going to find my laptop, or I'm going to find you to actually dissipate through. And so part of the grounding system is to keep us and the network equipment safe and have a nice ground for the lightning just to travel out through and pass us by. So it all begins going to the airport. We had a really crowded day that we left on February 18th around 5 o'clock at night. We had already begun to see many different barriers of the enemy against the work that we were going to do. We got there and our flight was canceled because there were storms happening in Atlanta, and because we couldn't get to there, that means we couldn't get our connecting flight to France, and from there down to Yaoundé. And so we got up to the ticket lady, and she said, I'm so sorry, you're just not going to be able to do this. You're going to have to come back in a day. And we're like, okay, we're not prepared for this. We don't know kind of are you sure there's no other flight? And she said, I'll check. And we were thankful to the Lord because she had rerouted us through Detroit. And she said, if you get on this Detroit plane, you're going to have to go fast through the airport. But if you can get on this Detroit flight, it will match and make it all the way to France, and you'll make it all the way to Yaoundé. So again, we're like, okay, already we're changing things up, and we're starting to get a little uncomfortable. We haven't even made it in country, and we're having to okay, take a new route. We're going to twist this way and that way. And so we get there, we masked up, it was kind of funny because when we got to Detroit, we had another barrier. We finally get to Detroit where we found our gate to go to the flight to France. This is now probably about 9 o'clock at night, and our flight would leave at 11. And they mentioned to this other man sitting next to me is a volunteer named Steve Maddox. He came with me on the trip. He was a whole part of the team. He was in the first picture. They found his ticket and they said, "I'm so sorry, but you have to fill out all this additional paperwork." And we said, but all we were told is we needed a negative COVID test, and we both have our negative COVID, and said, "I'm so sorry, no, you have to fill out, you need to go over there, you need to fill out this paperwork. We're starting to board, but you need to fill out this paperwork." And he's like, "What do you mean I need?" Well, it turns out that they had gotten his ticket messed up, and they thought he was staying in France. So he had to do all the immigration paperwork, and we said, no, we are not, it's a connecting flight. And eventually they were like, "Okay, let me call so-and-so over," and they had the manager come over and look at all this stuff. I'm like, "Okay, so are you or are you not staying in France?" We're like, "No, we're not staying in France. We're going on to Cameroon." And say, "Okay, you do not need this paperwork. Come on in." We made it in time. We traveled, and we got to do over into the morning, fly over beautiful France. It was really cool getting to fly. One of the cool opportunities of the gospel that we got to have is this flight in particular. I got to sit next to a lady from Lebanon who was a Muslim, but she would tell me, I'm not a practicing Muslim. But I believe that every religion has some good things in it that we can all just tolerate one another. And I was able to have a gospel-centered conversation and kind of be able to touch. I said, no, not all religions actually coexist. In fact, some deny others. And she's like, "What do you mean some other?" And so I was able to talk to her about Jesus and that he's not just a good person or a good teacher, that he is the Savior of the world. And I even left him I left her with the name Nabil Qureshi because she seemed okay, and at one point it started to see like she was kind of done wanting to talk about this. But she seemed just a little bit open, and I know Jen and Joe Stever, we had a whole Bible study on Nabil Qureshi's book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. And in his book, he has a very respectable way that draws Muslims in to read it and actually consider it instead of just flat out denying it because it's written by a Christian. Because he grew up as a staunch Muslim. And so she was like, "Okay, I'll read it. I'll do that." And so I was able to kind of give her kind of that light, and I'm still praying that hopefully she didn't just ignore me as a strange Westerner, and will actually get to see his book and his testimony, and maybe the Lord will save her. So we had really cool gospel conversations, and we hadn't even made it to Africa yet. We made it through France's airport. We had landed. It was now 7 o'clock in the morning, and their time, which is about 6 hours ahead of us. That is Coute de Gaulle. It is not the new one. They made a newer major airport. Yeah, in Paris. This is in Paris, France. So this is the older airport. They've got a newer one. This one it was crazy. Let me tell you what. We had, again, I have to preface this. Neither I nor Steve Maddox, who you saw that was sitting next to me, speak a lick of French. And we're going to a majorly French-speaking country. So when we get to France, all the signs are in French. We come out of the shuttle, and it's crazy. We get into this wide open area with this mosh pit of people, everybody kind of huddled together looking at these little tiny TV screens that are just flashing this way and that way, and we're like, "Okay, wait, is that our flight? No, I think it's that. Okay, that's our flight. Go." And so we're rushing to get to our flight because we have 2 hours that we need to before we board. We have no idea how big this airport is. It could be massive. We get to one area, and the whole airport is very structured weird. You're not really given a whole lot of guiding signs, and even if you are, they're in French. We don't speak French. So we find this ticket lady, and we're saying we're at gate M50. And so she's like, "Okay, you're at the very last one all the way, go down here." And you go through these rotating doors with these like green and yellow like buzzing lights. And I'm like, is this like, are we about like, I thought we hadn't even made it through security. And it's like, okay, wait, if we go this way, it doesn't look like we can come back through that way. So are you sure that's what? Yes, go that way, that's the right way. So we go all the way through, we make it to this area, we get through security, and we make it through this little area, and we go, "Whew, okay, let's just sit down." We had about an hour left. We're both exhausted. Neither of us can sleep on airplanes, and so there's like a little lounging area with the sun, and we're like, "Okay, I might go sit over there." And so as soon as I think I'm about to go get up, the lady is standing at the ticket counter. She goes, "I'm sorry, but the flight to Yaoundé is changed to gate L35. And let me tell you how we could literally see the other terminal across a grassy plain where we needed to be. And so if you hold up your fingers like the two, we were at the very tip of this area, and we had to go down, back through security, and all the way back up to the other tip we could see right across the way. We had an hour to do this, so we're just sprinting through this. We're going back through security. We find the original ticket lady that we had talked to had given us directions. She's like, oh yeah, you're here. And we're like, what? I was like, okay, I just got my workout in for today. And so we make it all the way through. We sit down, and we're so exhausted, and we're like, wait a second, is that a cat? And there's this massive modern art little cat sleeping on a pillow statue that we thought, well, this is a kind of fun blessing. We never would have seen this had we not sprinted from one side of the airport to the other side of the airport. So I got to take a fun little selfie with the giant cat on a pillow, and I was like, I want to be like that. I want to be asleep right now. But we boarded the airplane. We went and flew throughout the day over the Sahara Desert. It was very pretty, getting to see all the different sand dunes, and we got to see a lot, actually, of the Sahara Desert. It was pretty cool, because this is my first time out of the country and getting to see more of the world, and so it was really cool to get to see different environments, different places, different cultures. And we finally made it all the way to the Yaoundé airport. We landed, so we left February 18th at 5 p.m. We flew through the night to get to France. Then we flew all the way down a 7-hour flight to get to Yaoundé. So we left at around, actually by that time it had probably been around 12 or so. And so we left and we made it, it was more of a 9-hour flight, because we got there at 9 p.m. at night. And so we're exhausted. This is like, we've got, over 24 hours of travel, and we're tired. And we were warned as we went there. They said, here's how it's going to go. Whether you're vaccinated or not, whether you have every single last living vaccine, or whether you're just Joe Schmo walking in and you have your negative COVID test, you're going to go into a room. And there's going to be a room like this, very much so like this, where there's a bunch of chairs and a bunch of rows, and there's a guy in the corner, and he's calling, and he's shouting out things. I have no idea what he's shouting out, but because it's in French. And the guards, we come in there, and because English is listed as a national language, the guards do speak some English. I say some English because some of the guards would be like being able to go like calling somebody else over to talk to us. So we get there, we're handed a card, we write down, it's basically like, who are you, where did you come from, where are you going, what are you doing here, what's your social security number, what's your bank no, I'm kidding. So we get into this room, and the guy's shouting out, and we were told this is the COVID test room. It's a rapid test within minutes. Once you can get your test, you'll lean over. On the opposite side, there's another guy who's just calling out names and people leaving. So we get there, and we're given a number. I've got V32, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm I don't really know what we're doing. And it really both hit us. The guy is only calling out numbers in French. I don't know numbers in French. I have no idea if this guy is on 100, if he's counting down, or if he's on 2 and counting up. And so we're basically standing there just looking dumbfounded, and it was another area where like, God, I have no idea how we're going to do this. I mean, there was like 2 flights got in at the same time, so there's over 100 people in this room, all sweating it together because there's no air conditioning. And we're just thinking, Lord, are we going to be the last people out here? We're going to get out at like 6 in the morning? I mean, this is 9 o'clock at night. How are we going to do this? And this guy comes up to us and he says, you guys look like you need some help, in perfect English. And we're like, what? And he said, I'm a native Cameroonian. I moved to Dallas, Texas 12 years ago. I've been living in the States, and I've come back to visit family. And you guys, are y'all new here? He said, yes, this is our first time in Cameroon. We're trying to get through the airport. We have a place that we're trying to go and visit some friends. And so the guy was like, well, you stick with me, and I will get you through this airport. And it was just a godsend. So like we're all crowding around this guy calling out numbers, and this guy just starts rattling at him in French, like, come on, keep moving, keep calling numbers, and keep getting people in and out. And the guy's like, everybody back up. Everybody's trying to kind of crowd around, and it's kind of how the rest of the country kind of operates. It's a very key, It's not nice lines and one, okay, it's my turn, I'm going to go in there, and then I come back out, and two, okay. It's more like everybody's together, we're all in a huddle, we're all shouting at this man, this poor man who's calling out numbers, and he's like telling people to back up here, and you can come in here. No, 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 I didn't say you get back there. And so we make it into this little room, and then he said, our guide now has basically said, typical Cameroonians. And we're in there, and we're like, okay, we're inside. There are 3 little tables, and we're waiting in line. The person finishes in front of us, and so we're naturally about to step forward when the guy sitting at the table looks at us, looks at a family coming in, and goes, y'all come over here. And just entirely didn't care that we're standing in line. We're like, oh, okay. And so our guy's like, it's typical Cameroonians. Come on, we're going to go find this other table. So we butt in to this other table. We get our COVID test. We go out, the guy basically calls to us, and he's like, yes, all right, your name, and then you go out. And so, like, finally, this is crazy. Welcome to Africa. And we finally get through, and we make it to immigration. And there was a picture here, and I don't know if the picture's going to load or not. But immigration, let me see if maybe it won't. I have no idea how much of the slide is going to load or not. But that's okay. So we get to immigration. And in immigration, we have what is nice, neat lines. There are 4 booths where people are looking at passports, getting fingerprints, stamp, come on in. And we're waiting in line with, okay, we've made it past the worst of it. There was a lady to check our yellow fever card, because you have to have yellow fever vaccine. Otherwise, you're going to get it there, and you don't know if it was a clean needle or if she just stabbed 5 people before you, and she's just going to stab you too. And so we had her vaccine going in through there, and she's like, yep, you're good, come on. So we're waiting, we think everything's nice. And then a random guard comes out after all of us are in these nice, neat little lines, and they said, everyone with kids, come to the front. And it was just like, everybody just going around, and everybody just crowding, and we're like, what in the world just happened? It's like someone's like, I had kids 12 years ago, and, and so it's like, so now we waited, we didn't get out of the airport until about 12:30 at night. So we had been from landing at 9 till 3.5 hours of trying to get through this airport. And finally, we made it through. We made it through immigration, and we finally got to go. This is, Brian Yee picked us up. This is the President's Highway we got to go through. We made it through to our center, and we worked through, and the picture is loading. We made it all the way to our SIL center. This is a sign outside the front area. We basically, you get off of the President's Highway, you go through a couple different traffic circles. The roads are very, very rough there. So it was nice. It was kind of like at the end of the day, over 24 hours of travel, and we're like, we see the sign. It wasn't this daylight. I mean, it was still, we got there at night, but I got to take this picture during the day to get a better shot of it. And we finally made it to the SAL Center. So you're out of this one main road. You've got 2 sides of the street, and this is just a sign amongst a whole bunch of others that are pointing out this is the SAL Center. And you've got language services, you've got education services, we have a counseling center there, and a bunch of the different things that we do inside the compound. Now, I don't know how much more of the slide is going to open. And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to have it at least in front of me so I can see my notes and where we're going. So the next slide, let's see if I can go there. Maybe this will load. Okay, so this is basically the center. The center as a whole, this is a map, and so as we go through it, I'll kind of try, if I can, if the pictures will load, around the side of the center in a counterclockwise fashion. You've got currently, you've got this blue buildings over there. Those are the auto shop. They fix their own cars. They build their own cars there to help with the center. You've got, going around that gray spot there is a volleyball and basketball court. The buildings next to it in red are their communications and external relations and auditorium. Going around this big red T building, that's their library. The orange buildings on this side here are the old server room where their network equipment was, and the counseling office. And then this little square right here is where we stayed. Those are those lower apartments down there. And we had neighbors. We had some missionaries actually live on the center. They rent from the center and they stay there permanently. Other places, other apartments are just for renting for however much time you need and then moving on. So we had a couple of neighbors that actually lived on the center. And then the orange buildings in the middle are more apartments, and the red buildings next to them on the top is the administration building. Down below is where the new server room is, and across from it is the dining hall where we would eat breakfast and lunch. And because there wasn't enough people there during the evening, because most of the workers live outside, they brought our meals to our room, which was really kind of them. So this is the administration building. This is the whole center is built on a hill. And so this is the highest point. It has a tower right there next to it. It sends out Wi-Fi signals to the different areas. We have two other centers that are a couple blocks away where the missionaries live. There are other gated compounds, and I say gated for a reason. Most of the missionaries there, all the people there have barred windows and rebarb to slide across their doors at night because of the massive amount of crime that they have there. And now most of the crime is basically people just want money. It's nothing more than that. People are poor, they need money, they're going to come in, they're going to bust. In our manual, we have a welcome manual that's laid in each of the apartments, and it says, do not be afraid if you wake up in the middle of the night and there's a man in your room staring at you. They're like, he just wants money. Give him the money and he will go. Do not try to fight him because they are dangerous. They've had, in the past couple of months, 2 armed robberies into the apartments. And mainly they were looking for the guy who held the key to the finance office where the cash was stored. So we try to not keep a whole lot of cash on the center since then. Most of the walls around have barbed wire and electric fence around it, and there's armed guards that open and close the gates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. So going around the center, this is one of the roads leading to the auditorium, that building on the right there. This is the front gates going into the auditorium. These are some of the little potted plants. They had so many different types of plants there. It was beautiful. This is going in, looking into the auditorium. The auditorium was probably about half the length of this building, but twice as long. So it was more of a long rectangle. They had, while we were there, a celebration of Mother Tongue's Day. We didn't get to attend the ceremony, but we got to help set up some of the IT stuff for that ceremony where people would get to come and share about the joys of each person's tribe and mother tongue that we were working on Bible translation for. This is a little library out back in a garden. This plant here is about the size of a basketball, and it's kind of a gourd. I mean, it was crazy to see this tree here with basketballs hanging from its branches. And we said, does anyone eat this? Is this a fruit? They said, well, it's a kind of a gourd, and maybe some tribe somewhere does, but most of the time they hollow it out and they use it to hold water or grain or something else to help carry with, which I thought was pretty cool. Lizards. There were lizards, and more lizards. They're like squirrels. You just look at a wall, boom, there's 3 lizards right there, and you just look at them and they start scurrying away. So we had big ones, little ones. This is the library on the center. It was a very big library with some spaces and desks for some of the translators who wanted to work. Some of the nationals we saw while we were working in the library with fiber. We saw some of the nationals sitting at the desk working on their translation works and different types of written materials. This is going down the hill. This is looking out from the hillside down towards the apartments that we stayed at. And you can you see that nice blue sky and all those buildings in the background? This was the day before I left to come back. So this was 2 weeks in. It had rained 3 times when we were there, the first in 3 months. And so I didn't know those buildings were like that, and I didn't know those buildings were there because it was the time of the year in dry season where Harmattan happens, where the Sahara Desert sand blows in this area and covers most of the countries in this section entirely in orange dust, and dust is filling the air. You get dust in your teeth, dust in your eyebrows, you can literally, we had wiped off the table in the morning, and by the time we came back for lunch, it was that you could write your name in it because of how dusty, it's just dust in the air. So it was really cool to get to see some blue skies, and a lot of the buildings around. They had beautiful flowers that started it was amazing to see once the rain hit the first time. And again, the first time they had seen in 3 months, all the grass was brown. The next day, everything was green. The entire grassy fields that were brown and dusty, they were all just like ready to mow. And it was just crazy to see, really, there is life in water. We had some other little animals. This is a green rumped thresher. He's a little tiny bird we saw while we were there. This is going around in between those trees is kind of the pathway to a building where we would go. That's we'd go up this hill through those trees to get to breakfast and lunch and kind of back and forth throughout the day. They had coconut trees. This is a little pathway through, and they had mangoes. We were 1 month shy from mango season, which was was a lot of fun to see. Fresh growing mangoes and avocados. We went up, this is kind of going up towards the dining hall. This is where we would eat the breakfast and lunch and where we would meet many of the missionaries, whether they be Canadians or people from Germany. The missionaries who were coming in, we would all kind of gather at coffee break and get to talk to one another and get to hear their stories. It was a really great time of fellowship. This plant here is called the crown of thorns plant, and it's alleged that this is a plant similar to what was put on Jesus' head. It's a brown stalk that is all thorn, just all thorn, which was really cool to see. This is another bigger lizard. I kind of want to go through this. I know we're short on time, but it really was dusty there. They had a little prayer chapel out back. The work that we did, the fiber work, the IT team there, we thought, and Steve and I would talk each night after we would get done with the day's work and say, okay, what did we do that was well? What could we do that worked better? How can we be able to train them better? We went there not as doers, but as trainers. And the reason being is it doesn't matter how much I can get done myself over there. When I leave, if they don't know anything about it, it's useless, because when it breaks, it's not going to get fixed. They're going to abandon it. So we went over there to teach them all about fiber optics. How do you work with it? How do you use the equipment? That man in the nice black shirt, that's Monsieur Laron de Creux. He is a Frenchman. He's from France. His name means Laron the heart, and he spells his name like my wife's name, Lauren. And so he and Rachel sitting next to him speak really only French. They may understand a tiny bit of English, but so everything we would say, Emmanuel, who's an Anglophone but knows French fluently, and some of the other missionaries, because they live there and have been there for many years, they know French fluently. They would translate, we would say, they would translate it to them. They would ask questions in French. Those people would in turn ask us the questions in English, and we would try to think about it and then give an answer back to them, and then them back in French to these coworkers. So it was really cool to get to work with some other different language speakers while we were over there. But this is the team that does it. They do the work. So we taught them how to strip the fiber, how to cleave and cut the fiber properly, how to inspect it, because when light goes down this tube, it needs to come down in a uniform pattern. And when you cut it, if it's shattered or if it's cut wrong, you can take a laser through it, and we did, and put it on a piece of paper and see a whole bunch of stars like a galaxy form. Well, we don't want that. We need a uniformed red dot, because that scattering is all your data going a whole bunch of different ways and not where it needs to go. So we'd also teach them how to use these connectors. These are called quick connectors. You slide it in, you squeeze the blacks and pull it off, and that little blue piece gets connected into what we call a fiber box. And part of the finished product is this. This was the goal. These fiber boxes are used to convert from Ethernet cable to fiber optic and back. So what we would do is, this is in that center, that red building in the middle of the map that you saw, and y'all saw where we lived in those orange buildings. So we'd have one of those boxes in that red building in the center, one of those boxes all the way down into a wooden box on the side of the building where we stayed in the apartments, and they pulled fiber all the way to connect in between. And what would happen is, instead of using the old copper cable, which could conduct electricity and blow out whatever equipment was on either end, we tore that out and used it as a pull wire to pull in fiber. So now you have glass, effectively isolating our apartment buildings from being hit, from continuing on that electrical current of lightning damage all the way through those apartments. So we effectively isolated the apartments and gave them a little bit better connectivity for the internet, because fiber optic and these devices here run internet more stably than the old copper cable that was buried down into the ground. So we trained them on this. We actually set up in the server room, which is where this is. We had a little table. We had 2 little boxes. We made them do the fiber, put it in between. And we said, okay, you see how it's working. Go stand in the corner. We're going to do stuff to it, and we're going to see if you can figure out what we've done to it. Because part of the mentality is if you don't teach them on how to troubleshoot it and fix it, when it does break, they're going to abandon it. They have the mentality they always have plan B. They've always got a backup. So no matter what new equipment you brought, however much money you spent, whether it was $1,000 of new equipment, if it breaks and you didn't teach them how to fix it, it's a $1,000 paperweight sitting in a building, and they're going to go all the way back to their old equipment because they know we've used this for decades. My father's used it. My father's fathers used it. And so we wanted to make sure they could fix what we did so our work wasn't pointless. So we had, see if it'll go past this slide. So we had Emmanuel, who's kind of more of the guru of IT world. They're kind of one of the leaders there. He work on doing some of the troubleshooting. We had kind of them come in pairs and everybody kind of look around, okay, what was happening? So we'd unplug, because we didn't go out into the real world yet this day, but we would unplug one of the boxes so they could see, oh, look, this box doesn't have power. Like, okay, so right when you go to a box, you should look at these lights that were on that box and see, okay, if there are no lights at all, you've lost power. Don't rip out the fiber, don't splice on a new one, don't throw away the box. See, why do you not have power to the box? So we got to do a lot of breaking and a lot of fun, and then we went out into the real world, and we built what we called fiber boxes. He's putting on a spool, and that would keep the fiber wrapped around, so we'd have an extra amount of fiber. We'd install power in these boxes. We would actually, so we after training, we were hands-off. We were merely observers because we really wanted them to get as much experience with us as possible so that anything that went wrong could go wrong. We'd be there, we'd help them correct it, and they would feel confident that when we left, they wouldn't need us again. So they were able to do this one. We were kind of supervising them, and kind of Rachel's I said, can you smile? We need people to see your smile, because she was kind of just fully focused into doing. She loved the work. She was so down into it. We're like, no. People want to see you doing this, not just the back of your head. Oh wow, that's a great so-and-so. So this is kind of how it works. So you have the fiber coming in. There's the little black box you see down there. You'd have that fiber goes all the way back to the server room. So that's the internet coming in. It would go out and go to that gray box in the upper left-hand corner. That upper left-hand corner is what's called a switch. From there, you can plug in a whole bunch of different network cables and pull them all the way to where you need them. For all the computers for this office, they would come back to that little gray box there. We put in UPS power, so we'd have battery backup. So when the power goes out, of which it went out every day for probably an hour to a couple hours at a time, they did have a generator, so we weren't as greatly affected. But when power were to go out from the city and the generator not start up, the internet doesn't go down immediately. You can still have the emergency calling and things like that they would need for safety and internet access to keep working if it was still in the middle of the day. So that's one of the reasons we also put in UPS battery backup power. But that's kind of the goal for fiber. So around 30 buildings, we want around 60 kind of these boxes. So one at the building and one for where it would kind of re-enter into the server room. So we did this in the auditorium, and instead of it being nicely on the ground where we could get to it, it was over a door. So we had fun standing on top of ladders, getting the fiber up there. And you can say, what kind of how you work with fiber is we didn't want to be working on top of a ladder. Okay, I'm going to cleave. Okay, I'm going to, so what we did is you always pull enough to where you can pull it all the way down to a table. So we had probably about 10 feet of fiber there, or maybe 15 feet, which is a lot of fiber. And they're saying, are you sure we need this much? Well, can't we just cut it real close up there? I'm like, no. You don't want to be working on this up on top of the top rung of a ladder. Let's bring it down to a table. You can clean it up, get it nice, and that's why we have the spools that we install. So you can wrap it around this spool, and you have also, if it breaks, you have plenty left. So if it broke down where you had used it, well, you've got another 12 feet. You can break it as many times as you want, as long as you don't break it all the way back at the closest spot. So we had a lot of fun. We went out to the library. I got to be the chief fiber holder as we went up through that box into the attic. We went from the attic itself down a gutter, down to the ground, across the street. They were redoing the road there with a mix of concrete and clay. So we said, can you dig us a trench all the way across the road? And they said, yeah, we can do that. So it's probably around a 600 to 700 foot run of fiber. This is from the main library all the way out to the counseling office to get internet access. So you go up through an attic, so like through this entire attic, down across the street to these 3 buildings, and up through 3 attics. In that far building, there's a building right next to it. All the attics are shared. And so we went through 1 attic, 2 attic, and down 3 attics, and down into the old server room where we could finally plug it in. A massive, massive run. We wanted to make sure we could get some of these longest runs done because there was about 7 of us there. So we could, all right, I'll pass through here. I'm up in the attic. I'll shove it down there. And somebody's like, okay, I can pull it out. So we had a lot of people to do the work, and it was really great. We had a wonderful time. We did the same thing in customer relations building. We had Matt Lee is another one on the IT team. He got to have some experience too. This is another completed fiber box. And overall, we had roughly, we got twice as much done as we had planned to do, which was a very big praise. We had about, at the end of the day, we had, let me think, we had 6 different ones in the server room that were working. They were on a rack. They were mounted, they were working well, and they were sending out internet, and actually some of our apartments were those places. So we actually lost internet for the day, and then we were able to rewire it. This is kind of us using chairs that have nice little armholes for pulling the fiber all the way to where we needed to go. So you can see there's a man in the top right corner. This is through those trenches. This is down where we are. Those 2 windows right there are our rooms where we stayed. We pulled in the gutters through a conduit underground back to that same old server room. And so this was a lot of fun, just being able to get down and dirty into the trenches, making sure the fiber's doing well. I didn't add a picture, but one of the pipes didn't work right. It was a Sharper 90, so we actually used, in our kitchen, we have propane stoves. So we actually took the pipe, lit our stove, and got it hot to try to make our own 90 bin with the pipe while also not collapsing the pipe. And we're like, man, if anyone's going to see this, we're so glad we're not in America. Because they don't care. So this is the finished work with the fiber. All these in the server room where they're nice and cool, because if they get hot, they stop working. But these are all coming in. They're all labeled, and the team there knows where they're going, knows how they're wired. Each of these, you can see over here these multicolors here. Each of the fiber wire or cables that we pulled had 6 fiber strands inside of it. The blessing of that is when one fiber strand fails, like we chose white, when white fails and you've done all you can and you know it's the fiber that's broken, if it's broken way too short, you can swap to another fiber. They have 5 other spares basically to use. So if white fails, well, okay, pick orange. All right, we're going to fix it here on orange. Now we got to remember we also have to fix it here over to orange. Otherwise you're going to be disconnected. So we had a great time working with the team. We also got to visit the city, which was a lot of fun. This is kind of walking down to one of the centers, and we had a lot of fun being able to work with many of the places, going around and seeing the city. Now there's a saying, you can buy anything you want from your taxi cab window, and it's true. I mean, it's flat out true. We were sitting there in the taxi waiting This is a little video. I don't know if it's going to play. It doesn't need to have sound, but I don't know if it will play or not. But basically, we're sitting in our taxi, and we're looking out, and there's a guy coming down with a basket on his head and cow hooves hanging off of it. And so we're like, Emmanuel, because he was kind of our guide whenever we'd go out, we said, Emmanuel, is he selling cow hooves or is he selling beef? And he said, probably both. It just depends on what they get. And we're like, okay. We saw a guy selling rat poison. He had rat poison to sell. We were just parked. We're about to turn a little corner, and the guy's out there. Does anybody need any rat poison? We saw a guy with a whole stack of plastic cups going up 20 feet into the air, and he's just kind of walking down the sidewalk. Somebody who had an old mattress, and they had taken the cover off of it and stabbed a whole bunch of sunglasses into it and was selling sunglasses. Some people that would have cakes, some people that would have shoes. There were people that would walk down the streets. There was one guy that had a wooden box, and he was beating on it. And we said, what is that? And he said, this is a pretty cool thing for you to get to see. There are certain types of tradesmen that walk the streets. The guy who beats on the box is a shoemaker. He can mend your shoes, he can mend your flip-flops, and so he beats on the box and lets you know, hey, there are shoes that I can sell you, there are shoes that I can fix. There's another one who would go down with shears, he would snip, and he would bang them on his sewing machine, and he's a tailor. And so if you wanted to get a shirt made or a shirt mended, he could also get you fixed up and do what you need to do. So it was pretty cool to get to see those tradesmen going around. Now, I don't know how much more I know we're kind of over time, so I don't want to take more time than I need to. We went down to a little artesian market, a cloth market. The man there, he looks defeated. But I had to catch him at a different point because this is actually a very interesting thing. In Cameroon, it's very, it's not in one sense appropriate to be taking pictures of people all around. Basically, if you take someone's picture, they're liable to come up to you and tell you, you owe me money for this. And if you don't, they can be aggressive. So basically, we didn't take a whole lot of city pictures. If we did, it would be kind of like sneaking it, taking it, and then putting our phone away. And part of one of our taxi cab rides, the taxi cab driver said to Emmanuel in French, basically tell them to roll up their windows and hide their phones. So, because the part we were going through is a massive part of pickpocketing. And there's a story of one of our missionaries, our next door neighbors who served in Cameroon, that work now at the JAR Center. She said, Jordan, I was over there, and this one lady had the neck thing where you have you have your passport and all that stuff in there, and it's like, that's a kind of good idea. Basically, as they were driving through, she was told, roll your window up because we're going through a pickpocketing place. And she said, I'm fine, I just want to see the city. And somebody reached in, pulled it off over her, and stole her passport, her ID, everything, her paperwork, everything. And it was just gone, just like that. So it really is a note that when they tell you to do something, to listen. So this is part of the compounds that we got to go with the missionaries. And this is part of the little rainforest school that we got to be a part of. This is a international school that had the all-important coffee beans growing there. They had a bunch of different tropical plants. The man who founded this school really loved tropical plants and wanted the students to learn all about different plants and fruit trees from different parts of the country. And because this part of Yaoundé is tropical, any form of tropical plant will grow and thrive here. So they had different locker rooms and courts, beautiful flowers that were there. I'm trying to get it to advance. There we go. This is the middle school section. It was a middle school and a high school. Most of the missionaries who serve there from any different missions organization, much less with Wycliffe and SIL and JARS, they send their kids there, and even some nationals go to school there to get an education, a solid Christian education, which is really cool. While we were there, we got to go around back and look at their little auto shop. While we were there, it was a carpentry shop and an auto shop, so they're teaching their kids how to do trade work, and it was really cool. While we were there, we saw they were building a boat, so part of their little carpentry skills, which is pretty cool to see middle schoolers being able to do something like that. To me, it's just fascinating. A lot of different beautiful plants, a lot of different beautiful trees. They had a basketball court that was there. They had a soccer field. I mean, this is it almost kind of looked like a college campus. It was that big. It was pretty, very, very pretty. Super tall trees, beautiful different fruits. Some of them One was called a star apple, and then they said it's very sour, but a lot of the kids like it, so they'll go over there and pick it up, and it's kind of like a Sour Patch Kid. So they'll just pick it. They said they'll just pick that tree clean by the time. But then there's this other tree that kind of looks like it's green, but it's orange on the inside, and it smells a little bit, and they don't even touch that one. But you can eat it, and they said, and it tastes good. It just got a little bit of a smell, but it tastes better than it smells. So but the kids, they just no, they don't even want it. While we were there, we got to see them play the U.S. Embassy, because during this time they had COVID, had really kind of isolated a lot of the schools for soccer, and so they were trying to keep, wow, that advanced really fast. While they were there, they were trying to keep up their soccer skills, so it was really cool to get to take a break on a Saturday and watch some soccer overseas. That was pretty cool. The grounding work, and I'm going to try to really go through this quick because I know I'm over time. The ground testing meter was what we used. It was a tool that basically tells you whether or not a ground rod inside the ground is doing well, allowing lightning to easily pass through it and dissipate, or whether it's like Fort Knox and doesn't want anything to go near it. I got to do some installations of ground rods. This path here, during the dry season, water is key to getting lightning to, instead of hitting us or our equipment, to dissipating into the ground. And during dry season, the 6 feet of ground into the ground is very dry, and so it's very high in resistance. It doesn't like things going through it. So part of the key thing that we told them is look for places that are always wet. This is a hose spigot, and where the hose spigot is, you turn it on, and that thing, you could take a shower near it. It just, there's a little bit coming out of the actual hose spigot, and everything else is just squirting in random areas. Well, kind of what that does is it waters this grass, and so even before it rained and all this dead grass around it, there's this lush grass place, and we know, okay, this is where the water's draining. Let's put a ground rod right here, and we installed 2 in this little water path. And there's the ground rod in Steve's hand right there. They're about 6 foot long. And from that gatehouse that was in a previous picture, it was around 778 ohms. You could spit on the ground and have a better resistance than that. We dropped it down all the way to 38 ohms by installing 2 ground rods. And it was key for them to see something like that. So they say, no, this actually works. When you add ground rods in wet locations, they actually do help protect your equipment and your people. This is a look at the guardhouse. That guy in yellow there, that's one of the guards. They told the guards are always in yellow or they're in blue. And they have this little GS4 logo on the back and on the front. So if anyone's wearing something else and they're telling you they're a guard, they're not. This is how you know they're guards. And that gate there is what they would allow people to come in and out of throughout the day. Also, air conditioning units, whether it's dry season or rainy season, Africa is always hot. Always, always, always hot. And so that air conditioning is running 365, 24/7. So it's dripping water out. So putting a ground rod, again, look for the wet locations. If you have a garden and you see the gardeners naturally spraying the same place and it's very moist, and it's moist all year long, put a ground rod there. It'll help you. It'll help you a whole lot. We had different places, different people that actually joined the team. Steve's there. He's putting in a test probe down into the ground that we would compare with other different ground rods that we attached to. We installed a new one over there for the apartments. That was a lot of fun, trying to not hit major power wires that were passing through and nearby. It was kind of a fun. I don't have a picture of it, but I really wish I could. When the probes that you use for testing are about, one is 120 feet long and one is 60 feet long. And it needs that because of algebra and other stuff that it uses to calculate with the different resistances. But as we were coiling it up, it was actually kind of adorable, even if you don't like lizards. The little ends that we plug in and we were reeling up, the lizards started coming and chasing like kittens with balls of yarn. I kid you not. It's just, we're starting to reel it in and you see this little lizard just like, gah, 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 and just trying to, just catch it. And we're like, Emmanuel's like, so get a video. He's like, I've never seen this before. And they were attacking him like kittens with balls of yarn. It was so cute, even though they're lizards. We had a lot of fun being able to do a lot of digging, a lot of picking. Their massive radio tower, which was up to 100 and probably 75 ohms, we brought it down to 15 ohms. And that's really important because that's just a massive lightning rod sticking out of the ground. So to get that one super low, so that way when it hit, it didn't immediately hit the admin building. It could immediately dissipate down into the ground instead of out and away. That was a big goal for us. what we did accomplish. I said we got twice as much done as we had hoped to do. We went there with the plan of, okay, maybe we'll teach them a little bit of fiber. We might get a chance to actually do one out in the field, but we might spend most of the time just trying to get them to understand and figure out what's going on. We got around 5 different network boxes working, 3 of their longest over 500-foot fiber runs done with them. And we also got to measure each and every single one of their building grounds, so they have a map now of here are the high places that need to get fixed, here are the low places, they're fine, and here's how we can make a plan going forward. The other thing we did is we were honored and humbled to build relationships with these missionaries and these nationals who've been here for decades, the nationals who've been there their entire lives, getting to hear their stories, getting to hear about how God's used them and brought them into the work of Bible translation. And so in closing, I'd love to ask for prayer. Prayer for Africa, for peace, because currently what's going on right now is a very bloody civil war. The Anglophones have been treated very terribly by the Francophones, and because of that, they eventually got sick of that and rebelled. Well, instead of the Francophones saying, okay, let's figure out how to work this together, they cracked down harder with killings, with bombings, with kidnapping family members. We asked Emmanuel as a national, and I said, do you think this war might ever end? And he said, if it does, there'll be much, much more bloodshed. And we might actually see the Anglophone section of the whole Cameroonian country join Nigeria for freedom at some point, but we don't know. But right now there's a lot of war going on there. Pray for the Bibles. There are 33 Bibles plus more New Testaments being translated right now for all those little tribal languages that don't share tribal languages, that may speak French or English, but it's really not that clear in French or English. And apart from our center in Ukarumpa, this is the largest translation center in the world for the work of Wycliffe. We've got all those different translations, all those different peoples, the access that people from surrounding countries come to this center for translations like the Luke film and the Jesus film. While we were there, they were dubbing the Luke film, the book of Luke, into another language. And so we saw a bunch of these Anglophones coming in, and we talked to them and said, yes, I'm playing the part of Peter, I'm playing the part of so-and-so. And it was really cool to get to see all their different ways that this one center works for the gospel. And we were really humbled to be able to go and help them, because now with the equipment, now with the grounding, they don't have to worry about losing thousands of dollars of equipment. They don't have to worry about, well, maybe the internet's going to work today, or maybe we can get it to that building, or maybe the line's going to break and we might just, have to go without. They've got solid internal structure. They've got safety. And those are some of the things they don't have to worry about as much anymore, and they can have a plan going forward to make that center last throughout the next decades, Lord willing, to come to get the gospel out. That's the whole point of all of this, is to glorify God and to get the gospel message out. We wanted to thank you for Westwood. Y'all have partnered with us, and we wanted to encourage you and let you visibly see what your prayers, what your financial giving, and what your love and encouragement to Lauren and I is doing right around the world. It's just amazing to meet our brothers and sisters there and to encourage all. Like, this is not my work. This is not just Lauren's work or SIL's work. This is the body of Christ's work, y'all's work. This is what y'all are doing because you support Wycliffe, you support Lauren and I, and you pray for us. We've now got many brothers and sisters that are worshiping around the world, and we can say we got to meet them and we got to help them, and one day y'all will get to see them around the throne, Lord willing, and that'll be a great, great, grand day. Thank y'all.
Too bad you're not enthusiastic about your work. We love it, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me pray. I'm going to pray for us, and if you have questions, then don't go anywhere.
Okay.
All right? Hang on, ask your questions. Let's pray together. Father, we do give you thanks and praise for the way the gospel is going out around the world. I thank you for the way this assembly has chosen intentionally to be a part of it. I would ask that you would continue to give us a vision for that. And I thank you for the way that they've intentionally chosen to do this through Jordan and Lauren. And we ask your blessing upon them as a family. We ask your blessing upon their child for health, and we anticipate the way your covenant will go from generation to generation. We ask that you would continue to provide for them financially and give them opportunities to serve the body of Christ around the world. Father, what a blessing it is to hear of this work, and we give you thanks and praise for this opportunity in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
My brother. And I get the book.
You have a question.